Hi there, I'm Cheyenne.
And I'm Juan.
And we are Down with the Dominguezes.
Oh my gosh.
Hey there, everyone. I'm Cheyenne Dominguez, and I'm here with
Juan Dominguez.
Hi, darling.
Hello, love.
Hi. So we have had some stressors this week at home that we are going to fill you all in on, and it is around the topic of tardiness. So you're a very on-time person, aren't you, honey?
I had no choice, and we'll get into that.
Yes, you had no choice growing up. But we now have a 16-year-old teenage boy at home, and he does many things well, but being on time consistently is not one of them.
Not one of them.
little bit of a challenge in that area.
Yeah, that's right.
And sometimes assignments are late. Sometimes he's late to being where he's supposed to be.
Yeah, it's an opportunity area.
And you were a little stressed this week. It all started, I don't know, it must have one night this week, you were going to pick him up.
That's right.
At his friend's house at 6:30 p.m.
6:30. Well, remember, everyone should know that I'm asleep by 8:30 p.m.
So this is a late night pickup for you. 6:30
Well,
p.m.
I don't have a lot of time after work. There's like dinner and, like, I don't know, get ready for bed.
Dinner, brush, floss, go to bed.
That's it. And so on the weekends, I'm not as stressed picking him up, but he's always late on pickup.
It's usually late, I would say.
Could be a minute, could be 10 minutes, maybe as late as 15 minutes. I'm usually pretty patient. On this particular day,
you know what? Before you went over there, though, I could tell you were a little tired that evening. So I almost said, you know what? I'll go pick him up. But you were being generous.
Yeah, I said I'll go get him.
You'll go get him. And I was like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, in fact,
but I knew you were tired.
I was. And we had dinner beforehand, so I think I didn't leave the house till like 6:27. And here I am worried about, he's going to be waiting outside the house. It's 50 degrees, but
it's a 5-minute. He's 5 minutes away.
Yeah, God forbid he's waiting outside for 2
30
minutes.
seconds.
So anyway, I get there. It's like 6:31. I'm expecting him to be outside already.
He's never outside waiting.
No. And so I wait. It's like 6:34 and 6:35, and I think it was like 6:36. I texted him, and I said, "Hey, I'm outside." And I waited a few more minutes. No response. Right? I called him. I texted him. No response. We've told him to have a ringer.
Right. Teenagers don't apparently use the phone as an actual phone anymore. So it's really hard to reach him on the phone.
Yes. So finally at 6:38 said last chance.
6:38, you texted, this is your last chance.
Last chance. You're going to have to find another way home.
God.
So I left. And miraculously, once I was about a mile away and getting ready to turn back into our development, he texted back, "Hey, Dad, we're finishing up watching a movie." And I'm like, and I had already said I'm leaving. So I said, well, I'm not coming back. And then I thought about it and I felt bad. So I texted him again, voice text, not like text with fingers. And I said, okay, I'm on the way. I'm turning around. I'm going back. And
to which he did not respond.
But I'm expecting that I'm going to get there and he's going to be outside, right? And
so you turned around, went back. You told him you were going to turn around and go back. You did. You went back, and he is not.
He's not
ready.
there. He's not outside again. And so now I sent him a text and said, "You got 1 minute." I mean, I might have said 30 seconds because I'm like, this is ridiculous. And nothing. And I left and. Like again,
you came home.
I was almost home, and he was like, "Oh, well, once you said you weren't coming, I kind of put the phone down, and I wasn't paying attention."
So you said you were going back. He didn't look at that or review that.
No.
So once you said you were gone, he was like, "Oh, onto something else."
Until I came back and said I was gone again, and then he was not onto something else. But anyway.
And when you came home, it was kind of. It was like a fury of confusion.
I said I'm going to brush and floss, and I'm sure he'll find his way home. And thankfully, his friend drove him home. But, yeah.
And he didn't seem too flustered by it all.
No, and I gave him a hug. We kissed and made up. But I was a little stressed.
But it reminded you of if that had happened when you were 16 and your dad was coming to pick you up. I don't know that it would have played out the same.
Let me tell you about Juan Sr. my loving dad. He's great, but don't be late.
Don't be late.
And I lived in a very small town, and there was one main thoroughfare called Palisades Avenue, and you can kind of see from one end of the town to the other. And like any young man, I wanted to extend my time right to the last minute. And my dad wasn't picking me up. I was expected to be home. I had to be home, right? It was like a mile from end to end, so you could walk just about anywhere, and it was safe back then and all that. And so, it'd be a 10-minute run from one end of town to the other, and all of a sudden there'd be 9 minutes left. I'm like, I may not make it. And I'd start sprinting, and sure as heck, about 6 blocks from my house, I could see, kind of all the way. And he had a 1972 Cadillac Eldorado. It looked like an Israeli tank, and it would cover 3/4 of this main thoroughfare. And it was like Jaws, right? When it turned, you could see the silhouette of the lights.
And you knew it was him.
And you knew it was him. It was
coming for you.
Game over. And
you were not home.
It was like Jaws coming at you. It was like do. And yeah, and he'd pick you up. And the worst was when he wasn't angry and like would yell, you'd get in the car and there was silence, then you knew.
You were in trouble.
Could be a problem.
You were in big trouble.
Could be a problem when you got home. Yep.
Okay, so this reminds me when we first started dating.
Yes.
One of the things you told me, you were like,
I've
only got one rule. And I'm like, what's the rule? And you were like, something like, if we're having dinner or getting together with my parents, we can't be late.
Yeah,
don't be late. He's like, you can be late for anything else. Don't be late when we're getting together with my dad.
So you could be fashionably late to everything. You could even be like an hour, 2 hours late to a party, and you're early.
It's kind of like a cultural thing.
That's
too,
right.
in Latin America and throughout Miami to be fashionably late.
Yeah.
If you say you're having a party at 8 and you show up at 8 o'clock on the dot,
right? People don't get there till midnight. Annoying. I've done that. I'm that guy. I get there.
Show up at 8 o'clock
I get there at
on
8
the dot
p.m.
and there's no one there.
And at midnight, I'm starting to fall asleep, and I start leaving, and there's like 100 people lined up outside the door of my buddy's apartment. I'm like,
to get in, you gotta go.
But I gotta go. Yeah.
So that was your one rule. You said, don't be late.
Don't be late. And
when we're getting together with our parents.
And
I don't have a perfect record, but I try to be generally.
You usually upheld that. The person before you that I dated that did not uphold that, and we were pulling into the parking lot of the restaurant about 30 seconds.
So this was a dinner date with your parents.
Dinner date with my parents. Same instructions. Pre-Cheyenne. Same instructions given to that person. And yeah, we were 30 seconds late and we're in the parking lot. My dad texted me.
And you got a text.
I guess dinner's canceled. We're about to leave. I'm like, no, don't leave. Yeah,
we're here.
We're coming. We're here.
We're parking.
Yeah.
And then didn't your dad put his foot down when you were dating, when you were a teenager also?
Well, it wasn't just about being late. You also had to pass all your classes.
You had to have good grades.
A's or B's, right? In order to have your privileges. And there was one time in all of high school that they had these, back then you couldn't check an app to see how your kids were doing.
Back in the day, you didn't know. Parents didn't know what your grade was from day to day.
Until you got your report card.
So a quarterly report card.
Except for the delinquency slip. And the delinquency slips would go out once like midway through the quarter,
right?
Or the
like
semester.
The interim.
That's right. And if you were failing, they'd mail you. The teacher would fill out a form. It would get mailed to your house. Juan's failing trigonometry. I had like one trigonometry quiz, and so technically I was failing. But by the time they went through the process, they mailed it. It's probably a week or 10 days. I had a couple more quizzes, so I'm back to a B. I didn't even think about I'm failing trig. Easily explainable.
But your father got that slip in the mail.
My father got that slip in the mail. I was at track practice. He came to pick up my girlfriend and I, Karen, and we got in the car and everything was fine. And, he drove like a 5-minute ride to her house, and we pull up and he's like, say goodbye to Karen. I'm like, goodbye, Karen. And he's like, no, say goodbye forever. I was like, what?
Kind of hard.
I'm like, what? He's like, no.
What are you talking
and she's
about?
in the back seat. Like, it's not like she left and I was saying goodbye forever from the window. She was there. And I was like, I think you better go. And he let me know I was failing trig and this was unacceptable. And
you tried to explain that you're not failing anymore. You've already gotten the grade up. It didn't matter.
And I sounded like our 16-year-old does today when he's failing the class or something.
Right. Because he's always like, oh, but that was last week and I've done this assignment, that assignment, and it's not in the grade book yet. So my grade's actually higher than what it shows. Yeah.
Yeah. But,
it's like a dance.
I ended up a few weeks later, I think, being able to go out with.
And then didn't your dad remember when you told me this story, I think, when you were a new cadet at West Point,
It was before I was a new cadet. So we
okay.
lived an hour away. But in order not to be late on the first day of basic training,
Mhm.
we got a room up at a hotel near West Point, and my parents came with me. And so I said goodbye to my friends a day early and missed
Right.
the first night of like a big Dave Stock party. Like it was a 3-day party post graduation.
You weren't part of it.
I was not part of the party. So I missed.
Didn't he make you sleep with an alarm clock on your chest?
I don't
Isn't that
know.
the story?
I don't
Or
know
is
if I was
that
nervous. I did sleep with an alarm, a wind up alarm clock, right?
to
Old
make
school.
sure you weren't late?
And I don't know if that was his idea or
your
my
idea?
idea because I was petrified of being late. The funny thing is, the recommended check-in time at West Point for basic training was 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I'm like,
So you
"Dad,
show up within that window.
you show up within that window
Yeah.
and they on process you, give you all your uniforms, and by the end of the day, you're actually marching in a parade, believe it or not. But the end of the day is like 4 or 5 o'clock. And so I'm like, hey, I can get there at 1 and they'll have to get me all the stuff and I won't
Right.
have like,
You're still within the window.
yeah. And but I don't have to get there at the crack of dawn. Right. And my dad's like, no, you'll be there at, 8. So 7:30, we're at McDonald's having breakfast. I still remember I had like the French
Your
toast
last
sticks.
meal.
McDonald's had like French toast sticks and a hash brown and some eggs. It was my last meal. We got there at 7:59. Hey, Cadet Dominguez reporting for duty, sir. We drove to the football stadium. And there was like a 3-minute orientation, followed by my parents were there. Say goodbye to your loved ones. Take 45 seconds to say goodbye to your loved ones. And I'm like, who takes
45 seconds?
That's like the weirdest thing I've ever done. Like 5 minutes, 15 minutes, right?
A couple of minutes.
But I
2,
guess
3
it
minutes.
was probably longer back in the day, and people were like, "Mommy, I want to go home." So
Changed my mind.
I changed my mind. Please don't leave me here. It was actually my mom was crying and she was tearing up. So I tried to be the big guy and I said, "Mom, it'll be like summer camp. It's no big deal." And I never went to summer camp, but I'm feeling how bad could this possibly be? Until we got into the bowels of the stadium.
So you said goodbye in your 45 seconds.
In my 45 seconds, gave them both a hug, went down into like the bowels of Mikey Stadium. That's a football stadium. And they had us line up already like in a formation, right? You're new and you're standing, side by side.
You're about to learn quickly.
You're about to learn really quickly. And the first thing I remember was someone was wearing like some shades, some mirror sunglasses. And just like the movies, this is 1986. So this wasn't the touchy-feely, kind of where we've evolved to today. He went over and he said, "What do you have on your face?" Some other senior cadet. And he's like, "Sunglasses, sir." And he took them off.
Pulled him off his
face, threw him to the ground, crushed him with this boot. And I was like, well,
I'm never
it's official now. It's official now.
Day one begins.
Yeah.
Oh, and there you have it.
There you have it. Those are all my late stories.
Don't be late in the Dominguez home. Now, the interesting thing is our school district is reverting back to a hybrid situation beginning next week, which means our teenager now has to start school an hour earlier than he has been for the past year.
Let's bring it back to him. So
this is next week. You need to brace yourself because
you need to brace yourself. You're the one that gets him up. You usually try getting him up at 8:15, 8:20, and he keeps saying, "I know," and I know.
It takes 4 or 5 knocks on the door and visits to the room to get him going.
8:29:30, he's running out of the room with his laptop, booting up his computer, trying to be on time for class.
And there's no commute. He just has to turn on the computer. Okay, but now we're moving to hybrid. He's got to be in class by 7:30. So light a candle or say a prayer for us.
Say a novena. My Catholic friends would say a novena or light a novena for us.
All right. Well, we'd love to hear from you. How are things different in your home? If you have a teenager, maybe than how it was for you when you were a teenager. Times are different now, huh?
That's a great way to wrap it up. I think we'd love to hear your late stories and how things were different back in the day.
All right. Till next time. If you've enjoyed Down with the Dominguezes, it would mean so much to us if you'd leave a review and share it with a friend. Thanks, everyone.